All right, it's MOvember day 27, so we're getting down to the wire. I haven't done these every day, but I've tried to. Um, there's a lot I want to share in the next few days, but I've promised to do stuff on brain spotting, promised to do stuff on the polyvagal theory, so they'll be coming in the next 2 days. And the other thing I'm excited to announce is that John Lee, author of The Flying Boy, At My Father's Wedding, most recently the mother-son dynamic. I'm going to interview John and ask him about his work and working with men and couples in relationships, and he's agreed to do that. So I'm really excited to do that in the next couple of days, so I'll announce something on Facebook and Twitter about that tomorrow. Tonight I'm just going to keep it short and sweet. It's a Sunday night here, and I've been working in the office here today for this afternoon, and I went over and spent time with my mother, actually, and getting ready for Christmas. And my father passed away a couple of years ago, and so to be part of that family system is an interesting gift of recovery, because my mother hasn't changed that much, and I was the first child hero to her through her mental illness as a child, and they had a lot of denial about my drug use and even about recovery. I think they just think I had a bad trot once. I did talk about things in that relationship with them that I know my father really hated. We really came from that sort of English philosophy of, just keep calm and carry on, don't mention the war. And so I did mention it. A few years in recovery, I wanted to talk about the adoption. I was told I was adopted at 15 in the middle of an argument, and then never spoken about till I was 4 years sober. And I then went back and started to speak to him about that stuff. And I remember writing a letter about my experiences with that and other sort of traumatic things. And my father resented that letter, and he resented it for the very reason he hated that early childhood stuff where us kids would sort of mess up his plan, which was don't upset your mother. Now, Mum was mentally ill. She was already upset. She was an upset waiting to happen. But we didn't know that at the time. So to be part of their lives now, like my father before he passed, and I was able to promise him that I would look after my mother until she passed, and I meant it too. And it hasn't been easy because she's basically still self-centered and self-focused and doesn't have any sort of language that really allows her to get curious or compassionate. But I've chosen to remain in relationship with them, and Dad till he passed, and Mum. One of the things I really liked that became helpful to me, and I was sharing this with someone today, was the nonviolent communication tool of Marshall Rosenberg. And in that tool, he talks about listening with big-heartedness, and he uses the image of the giraffe, and you call it giraffe ears, listening with giraffe ears, big-heartedness. He informs us that they're the biggest hearted mammal. I'll take his word for it. I imagine it's to get all the blood to their head. But in recovery, we're supposed to... now, I thought I was going to do something on this today, but it looks like I'm doing something on this. In recovery, we're taught to have boundaries. I'm not even set up for this, so I'm going to do it. I'm going to do this the best way I can. So we're taught that as a person, we're meant to have boundaries. Firstly, internal boundaries that let us know what we think and feel are about us and created by us, because what we think and feel comes from our history and all the beliefs that we store and all the life experience that we have, and from that we assign a meaning. Now this meaning can be really useful, and in recovery, one of the sort of journeys around recovery, on one hand, I'm going to work with one hand here. One of the things around recovery was then this will then inspire what we actually do. We make a choice with that data on what behaviour. Now, why I want to talk so much about the polyvagal theory and what Dr. Stephen Porges came up with is that in regards to body, what we know now about the vagal system is that when we experience threat, when there's threat out here, when we're triggered, then it literally just fires up the nervous system, and we lose the ability, we bypass consciousness. So once once the data that's received is one of threat, then we will go into the, one of those Fs, the 4Fs, the fight, flight, freeze. And essentially then we go straight from body down to behavior. We react. The William James statement is, what is it? We run, I'm afraid because I'm running, or we're running because we're afraid, not really knowing which is the two. But in recovery, we get taught a couple of things, and they're wonderful things. Tools of Pia Melody. She's saying that, look, essentially, we need to have boundaries. When we experience another human being, it's really good if you've come from a system like I did that didn't have boundaries, that was full of arguing facts, assigning blame and keeping score. Then what you thought and felt was easily blamed on what someone else thought and felt, and you were blamed for what they thought and felt, and that's called enmeshment. So essentially this internal boundaries that Pia talks about, and external. I need to know how to contain myself and protect myself. That's actually my job. I can't be blamed for, I used to get hit and be told, look what you've made me do now. And that's no way. I didn't make anyone do anything. They chose to deal with it that way. Now this idea of an internal boundary has three things. Is this true or not true? For me, or is it questionable? Do I need more information to make up a decision on whether it be here or here? Because if it's true, I need to take it in, and I need to give it a meaning, and I need it to have a feeling. But if something's not true for me, I don't need all that data processing to take place. Now that's wonderful. If this person over here knows what that is and knows how to participate in that, and they've got their internal boundary and they've got their boundary, fantastic. But if they don't have that, then you're in a dilemma. And this is where the nonviolent communication of Stephen Porges comes into, of Marshall Rosenberg. Because what that does is it lets us, if this person over here doesn't have good boundaries, but we want to stay in relationship with them, so they might be a family member, or in my case, a grandparent to my children, then I might want to I want this person in my life. But I know that occasionally, because they're going to have poor boundaries, and they're going to, as he says, use wolf speak or jackal speak. So what that means essentially is they're going to talk through my boundaries. They're going to tell me what I should think, what I should feel, what I should do. Now, I can get all politically correct in recovery and have my functional adult try and inform them that set a boundary and let them know that that's not okay. I hope you can see this. So let them know it's not okay. Or I risk of running down to my adult adapted child that puts up a wall, and it might even be a wall of niceness, but intimacy stops there. Or I go to that wounded child, and that wounded child then just goes into being a victim and blames them and then does whatever it does. It might throw some of those nice self-pity bombs over there. But essentially what big-heartedness does, what Marshall Rosenberg tells us, is to listen to the unspoken need. When this person speaks, we'll speak. It helps me for it to stay, if I really want to stay in that functional adult, then if I listen with big-heartedness, is I listen to the unspoken need. And if I can start to respond and practice with some giraffe ears here, listening with the that open-heartedness, so I can actually work on how I listen to it. If I can set the boundary. Now, with this sort of fight, flight, freeze, polyvagal stuff, if I'm experiencing threat, I'm not going to be able to have access to this. So this might be, I've got to really determine in what relationship I can do this. And there needs to be some of these boundaries need to have some hard limits, like domestic violence, for instance, that there's certain things we can't work with. Once we've defined what they are for us, then what non-violent communication can help us with it, and this is basic. You need to speak to an expert if you want to know about this. But what non-violent stuff can do, what giraffe ears can do, means I can stay in relationship and listen with big-heartedness. So I can listen for the unspoken need. So if someone says to me something about me like, "Well, you're just trying to control me," then if I can listen with big-heartedness and have that internal boundary and get curious and compassionate, because there's that differentiation between me and them, that gap. This gap is essential if we want to stay connected to our spiritual center, what's happening inside of our system. I will not be able to stay centered if I can't have differentiation, because I will be determined, I'll be negatively controlled by the other. But this gap to see is really important. If I can listen with big-heartedness and still have that gap, I can stay connected to my spiritual center, my reality being based on what's happening inside of me, as determined by me, as I interpret this data. And if I listen with big-heartedness, I might not hear that I'm trying to control them. I might hear that that person over there is feeling unsafe and needs some more space to make a decision of some sort about their reality. And if I can hear that, I might get curious about, tell me more about what you need right now. What is it that you feel control with? Where do you think I need to back? I mightn't think it, but that information is going to be helpful. This, I think, is the hardest part of codependent recovery, because what can happen is we can actually develop this adapted self in recovery, and this adapted self can actually start to, we can have like a recovery adapted self where we start to be rule bound, and this person over here's got to play by the rules, and they're not doing it right, and we can I share my reality with you? Can I set my boundaries with you? And if it's someone we care about that speaks will speak, they mightn't be capable of it, but there still might be a way we can stay in relationship. Now, this certainly wasn't the share I thought we were going to have. If you want to look up more about the nonviolent communication, please, I'll put a link up connected to this of Marshall Rosenberg talking about how he does this. It's a wonderful technique. I know a peer and friend of mine that's linked to me on LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter, Wes Taylor, and he's been working with nonviolent communication for many years. Just did a great workshop in Canada with Dr. Gava Mate. I was very jealous, but I was very happy for my friend. So please look up nonviolent communication. It's a way of being in relationship with people that mightn't know the way that you've learned in recovery, but it's a way that you can sort of stay open-hearted and still have that gap through your own personal boundaries, still be able to share in ways that make sense to you in your recovery, but allow you to listen for what's unspoken, so you can respond in a way that might sort of bolster and foster relationship, instead of coming up always in tension and distress and essentially creating what we fear. So that might be my Movember Day 27 download. So I hope that there's something in that for you. I'm going to sign off and get some rest for tomorrow. But please, these last couple of days, people can stop donating, and there's many good causes out there. I've had a few people donate over the weekend. Thank you so much. I'm going to start trying to wax this little thing into some little tips here, just to get crazy for the last few days. I look forward to the John Lee thing, and I'll tune in tomorrow. Bye.